and we always say scouting is 99% frustration and 1% satisfaction, because if you're not learning, you're left behind in the sports game. It's just ridiculous because you're constantly seeing the next world superstars within the league, but at the same time, they're not all going to make it.
Hi everyone, welcome to Football-Oranje. I'm Michael Statham. Today I'm joined by Xander Wilkinson, who is a Dutch football scout for Heerenveen. Xander, give us a bit of background information about yourself.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm based in the UK myself. I'm only 27 years old, but like many people, I was a big football dreamer as a kid and things like that, and I wanted to be the next big star as a footballer and things like that, but I wasn't good enough as a footballer, so I ended up being one of those players that had trials and things with academies, didn't make the grade, went and played semi-professional football for a little bit before completely falling out of love with football altogether and spending a few years away from it, didn't watch any games, didn't go to any games. And then my love for the game came back when a friend rang me up on a Friday night and said, my team's short the next day, can you help us out? Went and played, and all of a sudden I realised I need football in my life. And I played a few games from then. I initially tried the coaching route because I thought, oh yeah, this is a nice way for me to transition into football again. Realised coaching wasn't for me for various reasons. So I went the scouting route on the recommendation of a former coach of mine. And I found a real love for being in the stands and watching these individual players and trying to fix them into different systems and formations, and maybe if it's a younger player, seeing where I think they could end up. And yeah, it's a real buzz for a love for the game. I mean, that's what us scouts pride ourselves on. We are the last of the football romantics, so to speak. We'll be happy watching a game in the local park in the rain, just as happy as we will be watching the Champions League final. So, yeah. So
well, that's the kind of thing people would love to hear, who maybe aren't good enough to play football, or maybe a little bit too old for playing football, and they can't necessarily get into coaching, maybe because they think they haven't been a player. But scouting seems to be that avenue that people love to take. When they love football, they love being in the stands. They love looking at footballers and seeing who could be the next Messi and this and the other. And I think that's a great avenue for people to really get into. So it's great to have you with us, Sander, to sort of talk about that. What is the normal route then to get into scouting? If people are really interested in it, what would you normally do?
I mean, generally speaking, when I speak to other scouts, quite a few of them have gone the university route of whether it's a sports performance sort of course or some sort of science-based or maths-based degree. However, what I would say is that's not necessarily needed. It's an easier route in terms of clubs recognise a degree a lot more, so you'll get more chances higher up instantly. But you'll find many people will get in as well by simply contacting the chief scout, the technical director, or the chairman of a club and just saying, this is who I am. I'll send you a couple of example reports that I've written myself. Can you help me out? Even down to your lowest levels, they will all help.
And you were telling me that that's kind of what you did, wasn't it? It wasn't necessarily that easy, but you didn't go the normal route into scouting. Could you tell us more about how you did it and how you became a scout for a Dutch Eredivisie club?
Yeah, well, I didn't do the university route. It wasn't for me, that sort of place, but I spent a lot of time, probably spent 12, 15 months going to games from local park football to the Champions League and assessing what was required for each different level in my own head. And then I wrote a few example reports, and via LinkedIn or people that I knew, I was reaching out to a lot of different people within the industry and saying, oh, could you just give me a 5-10 minute phone call for a bit of advice, as well as the networking purposes and things like that. And I got a lot of helpful tips and things like that from speaking to people from clubs like Man City, Derby Counties, all over the UK at different levels. And they all told me different things, agents, so many different ways. And the one thing they all said was, don't say no to opportunities, and contact every single person you know and every club you know. So I took it upon myself to reach out to every professional football club in Europe, in North America, South America, maybe in Africa, Asia, all in Australia. And I probably sent thousands and thousands of emails off, but I made sure I contacted the decision maker, because if I just approached a part-time scout, they don't have the authority to give me anything, and you've got to be wary of what you're giving them. So I went to the top dog every time. And from these thousands of emails, I got responses from maybe 10 at most, which can be quite demoralizing when you're spending days and months getting no responses. But of those 10 that responded, Heerenveen was actually one of them for me. And it involved a lot of then informal conversations, a bit more about myself. Obviously, they wanted to see a few more examples of my work. They asked me questions on players they liked, and then how it matched up with their thoughts. And so they were testing me out, sort of thing, which I fully understood, because as far as they're concerned, they have no idea who I am. I've just approached them, and they need to check out who I was. So I did a lot of things informally for them at first, just to build that relationship, which is the key thing. I mean, without any prior experience, I had to build a relationship from nothing with them and prove myself, which is the key thing, especially for people in a similar situation to me without the pro experience as a footballer. You're effectively starting from nothing. So you need to build these relationships and trust. And even, I think a lot of people start a lot lower than me. I'm really, really fortunate to have gotten as high as I did. A lot of people start in the non-league sort of levels and work their way up gradually as they get more experience and they feel a bit more comfortable. But just because of how it worked out, Heerenveen, one of the clubs who came back to me, I got a really amazing feel for the club. They made me feel so welcome. The more I researched about the region and the club itself, its history is obviously magnificent within the Netherlands. And it just felt like the right fit. And the things they were asking me to do worked, and the opinions matched. And yeah, the personal skills were so key. You need to build these relationships with those people within the club, because at the end of the day, people will hire people, and that's the key part to it all. You don't want to work with people you don't get on with. You can have disagreeing opinions, but as long as it's respectful and you get on with each other, and yeah, it's the personal skills are massive, and I think I've built that with them, and it's been maintained now for coming on 5 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes within the club during that time, and everything still remains respectful, and you continuously look to build on it.
That's a great environment to be working in, that people can respect each other, and you got in such a different way, which people might be able to relate to, and see that you don't always have to be overqualified, I guess, to try and get a position in this. It does sound like hard work, though, no matter which avenue you do take. It must be a frustrating thing to do, scouting, as well as immensely rewarding. Could you tell us about some of the experiences you have had with Heerenveen so far, in terms of the highs and the lows?
Yeah, well, like I say, I've joked with colleagues, and we always say scouting is 99% frustration and 1% satisfaction, because at the end of the day, we all build these portfolios of players and databases of players that we watch and we all love and things like that. And you might be looking for a position, and then you have 4 or 5 names on your database that you think, right, this is perfect. So you're putting them forward, and you're thinking, oh yeah, it'd be great. I'm going to get one of my players in. Obviously, it's a team thing, but you've got to be wanting the best for yourself. But you've got to remember then the rest of the team in the scouting department as well. If there's 5, 6, 10 people, you're all going to be putting in the same amount of players. So they might end up with 30, 40, 50 names on the list that you're really assessing, and only one might end up signing. So it's frustrating in that part, because, like you say, you're putting the players forward because you believe these are the right players. These are the ones we should be going for. And it doesn't necessarily always work out like that because of certain factors, whether it's other clubs sign them instead, or you do more of your background research and you think, right, this person would struggle to settle in the region, or they need to be close to the family, or the finances might not be right in the deal. So it's a really frustrating environment to be in is scouting in general. And that's not just at my club as well. That's at every club, and every scout I speak to, it's always the same. I mean, yeah, I've probably put forward or spoken to the club about hundreds of players over my time. Not necessarily push them for, oh yeah, we will need to sign these, but I've said, oh, these are developing well. It's someone we need to be really keeping a close eye to. And then all of a sudden, they're reaching a level where they're exceptional. You're thinking, we should really be looking to make a move for these. But then you've got a player in their position, and are they any better than them currently? Probably not. So you're not going to move for them. So then you end up missing out on a player as a result, who then might end up being one of the next big stars coming out of my region or out of the region I've been looking at. So you have to miss out on a lot of players for a variety of factors. And that's the frustrating thing, because like the big one everyone obviously looks at the moment from the Scandinavian region was Erling Haaland. So all of a sudden, everybody now is thinking, all right, we can't miss out the next Erling Haaland. So many have gone to Norway, to Sweden, to Denmark, and you see the prices shoot up as a result. So then it makes it harder for other clubs who were shopping heavily in that region beforehand to get the same level of players, because all of a sudden the prices are so inflated because the interest is so high. But then it's like anything, football is cyclical. There'll be another region that comes up, whether like West Ham are having a lot of success with the Czech League at the moment. So all of a sudden more Premier League clubs might have looked at the Czech League and things like that. So yeah, it's trying to keep ahead of every different trend that is being set without fully knowing what the trend's going to be. So it's like I say, 9% frustration, 1% satisfaction. And that 1% satisfaction is when you sign one of your players and they end up playing well, and then they move on to bigger and better things as a result. So you feel satisfied that you've helped them in their career, you've helped the club progress. Everything works out for everybody and everybody's happy.
That sounds like it's worth it in that respect. So what kind of players, what kind of leagues are you tasked with looking at? Do you work within the group to look at, I mean, you're based in the UK, so do you look at players in the UK, and do you help other scouts for Heerenveen decide on players from other countries? How does it work for you and the club? How does your day look, basically?
My primary contracted region is the UK, so a lot of my focus goes into like the under-23s league, so the Premier League 2 and the Professional Development League here in the UK, or players within the EFL in the Championship, League 1, League 2. So especially because I'm based here, I'll spend a lot of my time going to these live matches. So I'm expected to know who the best players are coming through in this region, or who maybe is ready to move to the Eredivisie. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's under 23. It could be someone who's 26, 27, 28, who's just ready to make that step, and it would work in terms of there might be a strong leader that we needed, or they might be able to add some experience in other areas of the field as a squad member or something like that. But my primary focus is the UK as a whole. But then as a team, we are expected to contribute with names world over. So I will spend a lot of time on Y-Scout and Instat and things like that, looking at different players from all over the world, really, primarily within Europe. But obviously then we do have to look at MLS or South America and things like that, just in case there's players available that we can take. But the conversations I have, especially with a couple of the other scouts in our department, is we'll look at someone, and then I'll say to my boss, "Oh, I really like this player." They'll get passed on to one of these. They'll have a look and see if they like him. So it's a constant dialogue between you all, because at the end of the day, scouts, you all have differing opinions, even if it's only very slightly. So I might really like a player, but my colleague doesn't like him or doesn't think he fits. So that's the end of the line. It's all got to come together. But then he might really like a player, and I have a conversation with him, and I say, I don't like him at all. So you need to have these constant dialogues, because you're a team, you're a department, you're a unit. You all need to be working in unison together and to get the best out of the team at the end of the day, because the recruitment is so vital to what happens on the pitch.
Yeah. A very underrated position in some ways. We always talk about the players, the coaches, the managers, and the scouts play a massive role in that too. As you described, you've got to be looking at players in depth. You're looking at stats. You're looking at players on the pitch. You're traveling all this way to just see whether the one player or two players are good enough. You must have had many games there where you've gone to a match and the player's injured, or you must have gone to a match and maybe something else happened in that you saw somebody else on the pitch who took your eye. Are there any players that you've noticed over the years, because you've been with Heerenveen a while now, who you've found, or players that you've liked, not necessarily for Heerenveen, but you spotted early on, that have gone on to do great things?
Well, I've been very fortunate since I've been with the club that I've been part of this generation where in the under-23s levels in the UK, we've had this big boom of your Bukayo Saka, your Phil Foden, your Mason Greenwood. They've all come through the league that I've had a lot of focus on. So I've had the pleasure of seeing these sort of players playing as a result of that. I mean, Phil Foden was always a big standout whenever he played, and he wasn't in the under-23 so much. And same with Mason Greenwood. He played probably half a dozen games in the under-23s after being promoted from the under-18s, and he was in the first team. It was just too easy for him. One of the ones that's maybe a little less watched was Jeremy Frimpong, who he was absolutely superb. I mean, he was playing as a right back, he was playing as a left back. Sometimes he played as a right winger. He was playing everywhere, but every time he played, he was just so electric. He was frightening. Nobody could handle his pace. It was just such a joy to watch. And I mean, it wasn't a position we were looking for at the time, but it was always something I was thinking, oh, whoever gets this player is going to have so much fun with him. And obviously, then went to Celtic, and he absolutely flew at Celtic, and now he's gone to Leverkusen as a result. And you get these unconscious sort of attachments to players who you really enjoy that they wouldn't be able to come to our club, whether it's financial reasons or we're not looking for that position potentially at the time. So it's just the wrong timing. But you always then follow their career and think, oh, it'd have been amazing. What a player, this, that, and the other. I mean, there's so many that come through the under-23s league in the UK because of the finances here, the pull of the Premier League clubs and things like that. So you see so many talented individuals. I mean, at the moment, you've got Cole Palmer, who's on the bench at Man City, who's still playing in the 23s league and tearing it up every week. And you get to thinking, right, is there a chance I can take him? Is there a chance I can take this player? Is there someone who's maybe so consistent within these clubs, but being consistent at a Liverpool, at a Man United, at an Arsenal in the under-23s level isn't going to get you into their first team? So then all of a sudden, you're competing with so many other clubs. I mean, there's the big trend when Jadon Sancho went to the Bundesliga. Oh, loads of young players wanted to go to the Bundesliga. But at the same time, how many were successful with that transition other than Jadon Sancho? I mean, he's taken Reece Oxford a number of years now, and it's well documented that the club liked him and things when he was at West Ham. He's a fantastic player, and he's now beginning to show it with Augsburg how brilliant he is. And I won't be surprised if he ended up moving back to the Premier League. But it's not just a given if you're a young player and you go to these places that you're going to get the game time. There's got to be a set plan in place. There's got to be everything that comes together. I mean, at 16, I don't know about yourself, but I would have found it difficult to move to a completely brand new country, getting rid of your friendship groups. You don't know the language. You're starting completely from fresh, nothing there at all. It's tough to adapt to that sort of environment at that young age, no matter who you are. And then you've got to factor in Sancho was a rare case because he was instantly in and around the first team. And I don't think players sometimes understand that's what's needed, is that transition to instantly around a senior team. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes players go into the youth system and it's spot on and it works brilliantly. But then you look at the examples in the Netherlands of players coming over, even short term on loan. Potentially you look at Mason Mount, Izzy Brown, even Lewis Baker, people like that. They did unbelievably well. And they're constantly getting moves, or they're now thriving in the case of Mason Mount. And a big part of that was the learning environment they had in the Netherlands, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. But these players went straight into a senior environment. So if I'm looking at these players in the under-23s league, I've got to be looking right straight into the senior environment because of how it will help them settle as well.
I mean, we've done a separate piece, haven't we, on some top Dutch talents that you can watch come through in England. One of the things that I wanted to ask you then is about the players that are going from the Netherlands to England to play and to develop. Is it a good idea? You said about all these chances with the Premier League under-23s teams, but we know how good Dutch clubs are at developing young talents and giving them a chance. And that's what you're trying to do, I think, in being a scout for Heerenveen in England. You're looking for those players you can give a chance, because it suits Heerenveen that they have young players, maybe are a bit cheaper. I'm making this conclusion for you, that they can come to the Netherlands and develop in the way that many other talents do. It's a draw that Dutch clubs can give that playing time. And I guess why then do Dutch players do the opposite and go to England so young? Because, I mean, they might be able to speak very good English, but that different place to live when you may be by yourself, leaving home as a teenager, and then living in a different country, that's a big move to make. I mean, so many Dutch talents are coming through in England. At talent as a whole, is it a good level? And how many of those will be successful? Because so many in the past weren't successful that went to England.
I think if you look in general, though, I think you've got to look at, it's the same for many different leagues. I mean, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Dutch talent in the world right now, possibly Virgil van Dijk, who's come a little bit later, but he didn't go direct from the Netherlands into the Premier League. He went via Celtic in Scotland, and then he's gone to Southampton. So he's had nice transitional periods. Whereas I think some players do go a little bit early to these clubs, but at the same time, I understand their perspective in terms of if you're with a club, say Ajax, where, like I said, they're going to get a chance. If they're the best, they're going to get a chance within the senior environment. But at the same time, they might be thinking, well, if I'm one of the best talents here, am I going to learn more with Ajax's senior team, or do I have a chance of progressing through with Man City's first team with their senior environment for 2-3 years, even if their intentions aren't to break through at Man City? Some of them think of it as a learning environment, being amongst those super elite, best in the world sort of 50 to 100 million pound players. They see it as, will I gain more from working with them day in, day out than I would staying in the Netherlands? So I understand it from that perspective, but some of them do go too early for them personally. And that's where you see some struggles, and some maybe go for the wrong reasons. I'm not saying what the wrong reasons are. I think everyone can make their own conclusion about that. But the Netherlands is such a wonderful place as an educational environment for players personally, mentally, emotionally, as well as technically. That's why so many clubs in England want players to go to the Netherlands. That's why Mason Mount came and had such a good time. And I think if you spoke to Mason Mount, he would say it was the key part of his development, was coming to the Netherlands, out of his comfort zone and the playing experience. So then, are the players doing the same coming to England? I know it's the difference is they go into the youth setup, which is the problem. I think there needs to be a trend possibly where players, maybe in the young Ajax team, have a loan to the UK. But obviously then the issue now with the work permit system. But it'd be interesting to see how a player on the fringes at Ajax, but more in the young team, did maybe in the Championship or League One for a year. And then would you see a similar sort of development for these players doing the opposite? You don't really see it. But then at the same time, off the top of your head, how many players make an instant transition from the Netherlands to the UK? Instantly, the first player that came to mind for me was Ruud van Nistelrooy, in terms of he just set the place on fire. But traditionally, it's just a tough route, and people need something in between to help them build. Yeah. So that's maybe the attraction for some of these youth players, in terms of the thinking, well, if I play really well at Ajax or PSV for 3-4 years, I'm still going to have another move maybe before I go to those clubs. I don't know. There's different cases. I mean, it's not always the way. But yeah, it's everybody's different. Every player is different. Every player has a different pathway. And I think a lot of clubs in the last 12 months, 18 months in the UK have also bought a lot of players from outside the UK before the change in the work permit system after Brexit. So I think you might have seen some players move purely because the club didn't want to miss out on something, rather than thinking, is it the right thing to do? But only time will tell with that.
I'm just thinking of some of the top players from the Eredivisie that have gone in the summer just now, and it was Donny van der Beek's gone to Man United. Obviously found it difficult for one reason or another. Hakim Ziyech hasn't been plain sailing with Chelsea. I don't think you could say he's found it easy since he left a while ago. You've also got top of my head, they've gone now, but you know Frenkie de Jong hasn't gone to England, but has gone to Barcelona, and he's probably the best player in their poor situation. I think, yeah, you're right. Every player is different. At the moment, there are players that have gone from the Eredivisie and have found it difficult in England. Someone who has done well, though, from that kind of transition is Jorginho Wijnaldum. A little while ago, went to Newcastle first after PSV, then went to Liverpool. I think it's up to the players whether they are happy to admit that they are ready for just 1 or 2 years at a sort of stepping stone club and then going to a top club. I think the vibe in England though isn't to use mid-table clubs as a stepping stone. That's not the general opinion. Whereas Dutch clubs would admit if they were a stepping stone club, and they'd be happy to admit that they'd sell that player on and make money from them. And then it's up to that player to also remember that if they stay at that mid-table club because they weren't good enough, that's where they're going to be. But some players would be happy with that, some players wouldn't. Yeah, there's different routes to it. I think you can always draw conclusions about Eredivisie players going for good money, they're not succeeding. There's a history of strikers, for example, that have struggled. Vincent Janssen's an example of that recently. But what does the future hold with it? I mean, is there a different kind of vibe coming from young Dutch players now, or the opposite of English players going abroad to play in the Netherlands? You're a scout for Heerenveen. You must see things work both ways. What do you think the future holds for both ways of Dutch players coming to England and then English players going to the Netherlands?
Well, because the change in the work permit laws now after Brexit, the same players that were moving to the UK at 16 won't be able to now. They'll have to be 18 before they can move, and then they'll have to meet certain criteria within the work permit process anyway. So they'd have to be pretty much playing all the youth international games, or they might have had to play minutes in the Eredivisie to gain the points to get a work permit. So that's going to be the first big problem for them moving to the UK. So as a result, you're probably going to see a lot more possibly go elsewhere in Europe. So you might all of a sudden see a lot more of the young Dutch players going to Italy, as we're obviously seeing a lot of the senior players now from Netherlands move to Italy, and they're having a strong, successful time as well. If you look at Martin de Roon and Tien Koopmeiners, and players are doing well, and it's a nice transition for them on the main. And from the UK, I think those who are there currently have what they call settling status because they've signed an agreement before Brexit came into play. Mm-hmm. So they will have until the end of their contract currently in the UK. But then when it comes up for renewal, they will still have to meet the criteria to get a work permit. So they will probably have to see some sort of senior minutes in a league that gains them enough points. So they might have to, say, for example, the contracts are expiring next summer. They might have to go out on loan this January for 6 months to the Eredivisie and play a lot of minutes, so they have enough points to come back and sign a new contract at the club. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't think anybody can say this will happen or this won't happen, but gut instinct tells me you're going to see a lot of them move back to the Netherlands. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, let's see what happens. It's a career move I think Dutch players should be following. Is coming through with mid-table clubs, going to bigger clubs, because it's brought so much success in the past. But that's, again, comes back to the point that different players will thrive from different routes. And also, same goes back to you, Xander, that you scouts can follow different paths, whether that's the normal route with gaining qualifications or proving yourself with a club, which you've done. To finish, could you give us the biggest attributes you think you would need to be a scout? What would you think the main three things would be?
The main thing I would say is probably the patience and the mental resilience. Obviously, as I've had to do, you get a lot of no's. You get told constantly no, 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 no. Like I say, 99% frustration, 1% satisfaction. So it's that willingness to keep going and the mental resilience to stand up for yourself, sort of thing. Because, like I say, everyone has different opinions, and if you really like a player, you've got to back it. Not necessarily constantly backing it in terms of, so you've formed a bias and you're missing out on things that they do or they don't do. But if you're convinced that this player is right for the club, you've got to back yourself. You've got to constantly tell people. Even if people around you are saying no and things like that, if you believe in it, keep knocking at it, keep knocking. And likewise, if other people like a player and you don't just say, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying, this is nice, blah, blah, blah. If you don't like it, say, no, I don't like it. People respect you a lot more for that than they will if you just say things for the sake of it. You've got to be willing to be open to criticism of the players that you like, but you've got to have a respect there where you can have these honest discussions. That's a massive, massive thing, because as soon as you lose that willingness to have a professional discussion, you're going to stop leaning on each other for opinions and having these conversations. something else I would say is obviously vital is your ability to assess players for levels and the patterns of things. So, as an example, something in the Eredivisie is for a number 10, you see a lot bigger gaps between the lines between the opposing midfielders and the defenders. Whereas in the UK, you see a lot of teams maybe play a lot deeper, low block sort of thing. So there's a lot less gaps in between the spaces. So if a player's managing to create a lot of chances in between the lines in the UK, then how are they going to fare when they get even more space when they go to the Netherlands? Or if they're struggling in the UK because the spaces are so small, you've got to then break it down even further to, right, so which parts have they succeeded in? And if it's a case of they've simply just been swarmed in the UK and they can't do anything about it, you've got to then think, right, well, they actually scored a lot of goals from this area. In the Netherlands, they're going to get a lot of spaces in that area, so it actually could work. And the problem solving and the pattern finding is massive, because if you find something that nobody else has noticed, you're ahead of everyone, which is the big thing. And it's like many things. If you are a good problem solver, you will find the answers for what you're looking for. And another quality I'd say is big is your personal skills. Your networking is huge. Most people get jobs within football because of who they know, not necessarily what they know. Getting in is the hard part of being a scout. So if you can message with someone who's a scout and you can lean on them, or if you can go to a game and just chat to an agent or something like that, these people remember you, and you never know when you're going to come across them and when you're going to need them again. It could be a case of I get let go by my club in the summer and I can message other scouts that I know saying, oh, this has happened. Is there a job available? And they go, oh, yeah. And then I can directly contact their boss, and you've got somebody within their department who already knows you. And that's a lot better for the club to hire you as a result, because they know who they're working with. And a lot of clubs don't generally advertise roles that are available. So if you know people within these environments, you find out a lot of information as well. So probably the personal skills and the networking are the vital part of being a scout, because you have to lean on so many people, and without it, you're just going to stay at one level. You need to be looking to constantly develop yourself and evolve. If you're not learning, you're left behind in the sports game. Especially if you look at the moment, the big trend is people love the data, which you have to learn. It's as simple as that. Going forward in the future, you have to learn about data. Whether, I'm not saying you have to be able to produce these outstanding visuals and things like that, but as long as you have a basic understanding of, oh, this is a good number, this is a bad number to certain things, you will be fine. But you need to be willing to learn and adapt. Don't shut anything off and say, oh, well, I'm good at this, I don't need to do that. You've got to be open, and people will tell you as well, and people will help you. Nobody who I know who's a scout, if you said, oh, I'm not sure on this player, or I'm not sure how to assess this position, if you ask them, they would say, oh, well, when I've looked at it, I've noticed this, or I've noticed that. Everyone's so friendly to your face in the environment. People are willing to help, because you all got the same common goal of looking to develop yourself and get the best out of your club.
That's excellent, Xander. Thank you very much for giving us that information into being a scout. I think the final thing I'd say is it goes for many roles in football. What we do at Football-Oranje, like, we don't do it as a job, different to you, but working in football in general and getting opportunities is asking people, networking, and that's it. I think that's then your way in, and then everything else comes after, and all those different skills. But certainly networking is a way into lots of roles in football. Thank you for your time, though. Really fascinating to hear your route into scouting and the things that you have to come and face every single day. But it also sounds a really rewarding job when you get to work with lots of people in football, because it's a thing you dream about and have thought about doing for years. And yeah, doing it on a regular basis, going to games. That sounds fantastic. But, yeah, we've done another piece on top 5 Dutch talents you can watch in England. So if you haven't seen that already, go and check it out. We'll leave a link to it. And yeah, Xander, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. It's been a good fun. So thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. And yeah, best wishes to you and Heerenveen this season in the Eredivisie.
Thank you very much. And yeah, hopefully we can continue pushing up the table and have a successful January and summer window as well.